This meeting to order. It is Wednesday, March 26, 2025, and it is 10:30 a.m. And we're here to discuss with Public Works Management and SRS updates. And I will turn it over to Commissioner Cowles first, and we'll start from here.
I guess, it's been a concern with the public is the SRS updates. So that's one reason I thought we should have this meeting just on the SRS where it's at.
Absolutely. I've kind of chatted with each of you individually. At some point we would want to bring this to a public meeting to just kind of talk about it as a group. Uncertainty with the SRS. It did not go through when it was supposed to. Just to give you guys an idea what that funding, that revenue looks like for my department, it's just a hair under $1.5 million as a total for our county, Shoshone County as a whole. It's $2.8 million. 1.5 of that comes to my office. It accounts for approximately 40% of my total budget revenue. So for that to not be funded is a grave concern for us. We're trying to look ahead at what that might look like. Our other funding source, just to kind of educate the public and get them up to speed, is the highway user revenue, and that has 4 different components in it. That one, there are still some things up in the air with that they're working through. I got some email updates that look pretty good, but right now we're kind of in a point of uncertainty. Our cash reserves are good at the moment, but everybody knows you can't live off your cash reserves. So as it stands now, the last payment that we received off of the previous SRS was in April of last year. So until something is signed, nothing is coming in from that source. And while we have cash reserves, if we were to operate at this capacity to get us through that deficit for about 2 years, we would be down to the point after that 2-year mark, if nothing else came up, of having no cash, which is not an option. Similar situation happened back in 2016, 2017, 2018. It stalled, it didn't pass. There was quite a period of time where it didn't go through. The road department the first year did some initial cuts. The next year, they did some deeper cuts, and in 2018, they got to the point where their cash was down to $100,000 or something in that realm, where they were going to struggle to make payroll. They had drafted furlough letters that were ready to go out. So that's how it can get if it's not looked at and discussed and taken, seriously and aggressively in the beginning. Now on the flip side of that, the bill stalled out at the House prior to the new year. It was mid-November, and everything went into recess and it just stalled. And so what they've done is brought a new bill forward, and they're aggressively trying to get it through. From what I am understanding, it's got a lot of support. SRS is a national thing. It is not just a state of Idaho or Shoshone County thing. There are roughly, I think it was 33 counties in Idaho that are recipients. Throughout the country, there's over 700 counties, and it goes to some other things. It funds schools, that like lots of different things. But in our county, the lion's share goes to the road department for our maintenance. We don't assess property taxes to fund the road department. There's no money taken out of property taxes. It is just the SRS funds and the highway user revenue.
Okay.
So what I had kind of been doing, just as a cautionary attempt to hopefully buy some time until things go through, I've notified our supervisors and mechanics that I would like all spending is necessary spending, but any spending that doesn't pertain to our right now day-to-day activities, meaning, if we had a plow break on a pickup, that I would consider that necessary, and I would authorize that expenditure to have that fixed because we can't work without it. But if we needed something for something that we would do in the fall, we would probably just hold off on that and not do maintenance on, whatever machine that was, or, we need to wrap our heads around around and wait for things to come down with where we're at now. So we are under budget right now for where we could be, where we are in the year. We have openings in multiple districts. We did fill 2 of them. At one point, we were down 5 full-time employees. And in addition to that, we had 2 out for medical leaves. And so that left us down 7 people. So we did fill those 2 positions. They just started this yesterday. We still have 3 open positions, and we have one of our employees that is slated to retire in May. So then that will leave us with 4 openings. So in the Osborne district, we have kept on because our budget line for the temporary employees is under right now. Winter was a little bit lighter for us, and so we are keeping them on for approximately another month just to kind of help with the day-to-day activities in the Osborne district while the crews are up trying to open Moon Pass. And so it allows us to make sure that there's no break in the maintenance in that district. If something comes up, we have somebody available down here. We don't have to try to get them off the hill with no radio service, and if a tree should come down or something like that. So that's kind of where we're at now. Speaking to the general fund, we had a little bit of a scare with some comments that have come down. Everything ties together, and when there are cuts, statewide for certain things, that money has to come from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So there were some talks. There is a transfer, and they call it the general fund transfer. It's one of the 4 components that makes up the highway user revenue for the state of Idaho. They call it the general fund, and so we get a transfer of that. Sometimes it's 2 quarters of the year, sometimes it's the 4th quarter. And there were talks about cutting that to offset some of the other cuts, and they had a workaround. I did just get an email last week from Seth Grigg from the Idaho Association of Counties that said the strategic initiatives, which makes up some of the general fund funding, they will be cutting that to the tune of $10 million statewide. But what they are doing is they are offsetting the loss of funds by House Bill 25, which raises the amount of funds allocated to local highway jurisdictions through the TECM fund to $45 million, whereas it was $11 million below. So they're going down $10 million in one category, but going up $10 million in another category. So that should take a little bit of the heat off that. We shouldn't see that.
You said 10 million, and then they're going to up it by 45
Yep, they're
million?
taking 10 million out of strategic initiatives, and then they're upping the TECM 11 million.
Oh,
so
11
yeah, so it'll be a
okay.
net gain
Yeah.
of
Okay.
1 million.
Okay.
Yeah,
Net gain
I
of
saw
1 million.
that. I read that too last
Yes,
week.
yeah. So I was pleased when I saw that go through, because that with the SRS funds, all the uncertainty with that, and then having uncertainty with the highway user revenue was very concerning. Last year, I don't know how familiar you guys are with the historical amounts that we've gotten for highway user revenue. Last year in fiscal year 24, we saw a giant increase in the highway user revenue. We did not see that coming, and we did not budget for that. So we kept our budget with what we had historically gotten the previous few years for the highway user revenue and the SRS funds. And we ended up getting more, which basically just increased our cash. It went in and we didn't really, do anything with it. So in 2023, our total highway user revenue was $2,131,086.10. That was for fiscal year 23.
And that's SRS plus the...
Nope, that's just highway user.
Highway user.
So a huge increase from previous years. 2024, when everything came through, our total highway user revenue was $3,638,451.50. So there was a giant jump in that. Most of it came from the general fund transfer. which is made up of several components. Most of that came in the fourth quarter. We had a little bit of an increase with the sales tax, but highway user revenue is funded to us on a quarterly basis. The different categories are funded. There's a total highway user revenue, or I mean an old original highway user revenue, and we get almost pretty equal payments once every quarter. The next one is the new HB 312 highway user revenue, and we get quarterly payments on that. Mm-hmm. Last year, we got, in the general fund, we got quarterly payments, which is unusual. We got quarterly payments, and then the fourth quarter was big. That paid out, I think they were conservative. They had some left and then distributed what was left, is my understanding. So that was huge. And then the sales tax, we got payments in the third quarter and the fourth quarter.
So how much more did we receive in the last 2 years that we didn't? What was the total we budgeted? And
so last year we had budgeted for, I have written that down here. We had based it off of the 22, I believe, which was like 1.6 million. Okay. No, wait a minute. The 22, 2.2 and change.
2.2 last year is what you
yeah, in 22, and those were kind of the numbers that we had based that off of.
Okay.
Total in 23 was 2.1 and change, and then 24 jumped up, a huge amount to 3.6. So that's helpful for us. We're hoping that the trend continues this year. Quarterly payments, third quarter payment will come in. Their fiscal year is a little different than ours. So the April payment hasn't been posted yet, what we're going to get. So I won't know for another probably week or two until they post that. That might give us a snapshot into what we might be looking at this year for total. And usually the bigger totals, because it's kind of what's left over and hadn't been distributed, comes in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
So for budget planning this year, we start our budget requests and working on that in May. It's going to be a little interesting. My thoughts, and please let me know what you guys think as a board. With everything looking positive, maybe our first submittal sheet will be like if the funding is there. With me actively working on a plan, and we would know before we sit down in August what we're looking at, because the other payments will come in July. Okay. We'll know where we're at. Having that second plan, I can then meet again with the board, and we can kind of decide as a group if we're going to have to look at doing something significant for cuts. I don't know how that works as far, and maybe you can shed a little light, and maybe we have to talk to Lori. But the submittals in May, I don't know how that would look if we submitted a very scaled back version in May and then tried to switch gears later as we get to August. I don't know what would be better or what is allowable. I don't know what your thoughts are on that as far as our May submittals.
Okay, well, one of the things we could be doing right now is it's a lot harder to cut than it is to add employees.
Sure.
So maybe we should be looking at the employees that, the kind of holding off on hiring.
We can do that. I've thought about that. I've got some applications that had come in, and I was waiting to give them a call back until we had this meeting, because I kind of anticipated this discussion. Yeah. What that looks like for us right now, we'll be okay. Where it hurts the most is in our Marble Creek district.
And that's what I was thinking. Maybe you'd have to do it.
We're staffed for 4.
Have to shift it.
Yeah, so we're staffed for 4. Currently, we only have 2. That is a dangerously low staffing level. I would be comfortable if we had 3. But right now...
Maybe you can hire in that district, Because you have districts that you have,
Yes.
you have to have people.
Yes, Osborne District, we're
Yeah.
fine. Smelterville District, we'll be fine with our current staffing level.
Mhm.
We're down. And then next month in Murray, we'll be down, but we'll still have 3 employees. So that's workable and manageable, and I'm definitely comfortable doing that. And then we can always reconvene if we need to discuss a permanent adjustment
And maybe
of our staffing levels.
Maybe what you want to do is go to your department or your heads and ask them what what staffing would look like if
we had to, worst case scenario,
and just say what do you need to get the job done and things like that. So
the necessities,
and things like that, so that they kind of just make sure that we're covering our bases. It might not happen. It may
My biggest concern with that, because we've looked into this, I've worked heavily with our supervisor from Smelterville. Shane's been a county employee for 30 years. He just hit his 30-year mark within the last year. His department used to have 10 full-time employees. With how their routes are and how they're spread out, they have been cut to 7, including Shane. So we can operate certain times of the year at lower staff.
Yep.
We might be able to make some of that up. Where we really feel the hit is the winter time.
Yeah.
We might be able to make some of that up substituting temps.
Yep.
The problem with that is we have a hard time filling those temp positions. So it's kind of a gamble, but it's something that we've talked about and it's worth considering if we need to get there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I didn't know they were there. So there's 7 down there. And what do we have over there in Osborne?
Osborne is staffed for 7. So
7.
7 in Osborne, 7 in Smelterville,
7.
4 in Marble Creek, and 4 in Murray.
And Murray, we got staff?
We've got a full staff right now. There will be 1 transfer from that district into the Smelterville district, which will leave us, when we have our 1 retiree coming out of the Smelterville district, it'll leave us
with 7.
It'll leave us down 1 in. It'll leave us down 1 in Murray. It'll leave us down 1 in Smelterville, and it'll leave us down 2 in Marble Creek. So we would still have 4 openings once that employee retires in May.
Okay. Amy, I would discuss with the Smelterville, and I would just see what could they get by with 3, and each the other one could get by with 5. Could they just
And what that could look like is, and it would be a lot of meetings with us in the board, is what the level of service, particularly in the wintertime, would look like. And that's something that
be relying more on our temps.
We would.
That's what.
And so we get it. It's always, if we can get temps, it's great. We have some returning temps that come, and they're, retirees from the county road department. So, so they're very well versed in our operations and can complete the job efficiently. We've had years where we haven't been able to fill the temp positions, and so then that leaves us pretty lean. Just some things to start thinking about. We've got some time. In the meantime, what I'll do is I will not fill those positions until we hopefully can hear a little bit more, particularly on the SRS funds. I'm pretty comfortable with where we're at with the highway user right now. If I get any updates, I'll make sure to pass them along to the board, and we can meet as often as necessary when changes come up. But that's kind of where I'm at. I've been following this, since the end of last year, and was hoping that things would be moving faster, but things move at the pace they move at.
And I'm not talking about really cutting,
just holding off on filling.
So if we had 2 people that left the Osborne district, can they get by with 5 without rehiring?
Sure.
Just get that ballpark figure of how that would look if.
And right now we're pretty good. The only position right now that I would consider filling, and I could certainly check with you all first, is if we had an applicant down in Marble Creek. To get that third person. A lot of it comes into safety issues. We kind of ran into that last year where we were down to 2. 1 went out on a medical. We had 1. And so with limited radio communication down there, it presents a huge safety concern, sending him out to do things. And usually when it's a down tree or a rock slide, we need to. He can't adequately flag when he's a one-man show. So we would send people, we would pull from different districts and have to send them down to take care of things. So kind of causes a cascading effect. But right now, with the exception of that Marble Creek position, and sometimes those positions will stay open for a year. It's hard to find somebody with a CDL that wants to work that job in that location that can, live in the vicinity and kind of get there. So that would be the only one that I might consider entertaining some interviews for, but the other ones I'll leave as they are.
Okay.
And then if anything changes with the status of the SRS, or if I hear anything else come up on the highway user that might be concerning, I'll make sure and we'll talk about it in a meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Commissioner Dose, you got anything?
No, I think that makes sense. I would voice my support for trying to get a third person in Marble Creek. I don't.
And we've
think we can.
had it advertised. It's just we have not had, we haven't had the applicants, which is pretty on trend for down there.
And that's the hard part, and that comes from the state and the federal highway. It's going to come to a point where we're not going to be able to afford CDL drivers.
Correct.
Because of the cost of, because people aren't going to go out there and spend $6,000 just to come in and make a lower wage. So that's the hard.
And so it is something that we talked about trying to develop and grow an in-house training program. What that would look like, I'm not sure.
Could you do it in joint with, could you do something like that in joint with the transfer station?
If we did something
go
like that,
together.
I would recommend that we do that for, the county departments with the CDLs. It would make sense because it would be a benefit to the county as a whole.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Public comment?
Yeah, I just haven't seen the budget since February. I know I had a couple concerns, but I can't remember what they were. So.
Anything else? Okay. Looks good.
Perfect.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.